Welcome back to The Initiation, a podcast for those who sense we're living through a planetary turning point. A space to explore the converging crises, emerging breakthroughs, and the inner and outer transformations needed to rise to the occasion. In the last episode, we laid out the bigger picture, a convergence of breakdowns and breakthroughs that signal something far deeper than just disruption, something that feels initiatory, a threshold moment in the human story. After recording that first episode, I got clear on how to shape this first season, and I want to share that with you. Rather than jumping from guest to guest or topic to topic, I want to ground the first season in a structured narrative and an arc, one that gives us the full lay of the land before we zoom in. First, by introducing the phase change metaphor, the hidden patterns of transformation that nature offers us. Then we'll explore the four major forces of upheaval shaping our moment: the rise of superintelligence, the unraveling of the monetary system, accelerating climate disruption, and geopolitical instability. And finally, we'll track the breakthrough forces emerging through the cracks: new technologies, new systems, and new states of consciousness. Why this structure? Because I believe it's essential to start from a wide, integrated view, to see the whole field of transformation we're living through before we start analyzing its parts. In times of chaos, narrative becomes an anchor. It helps us orient not just to what's happening, but to who we might become through it. My hope is that by building this foundation together, episode by episode, we can develop a shared lens and narrative, a deeper understanding of the moment we're in, and a clearer sense of how to meet it. So with that frame in mind, let's begin where all deep transformation begins. Not in a news cycle, but in nature itself. Because across biology, physics, and even collective behavior, nature shows us that profound transformation tends to follow a deeper pattern, what scientists call phase change moments. These are not slow incremental shifts. These are moments when a system doesn't just adapt, it reorganizes. It becomes something else entirely. And today we'll explore 4 examples of that kind of transformation, each from a different domain of nature, and see what they might teach us about this pivotal moment in the human journey. So let's dive in. So, in nature, transformation doesn't just happen randomly. It follows deeper patterns, rhythms that repeat across different systems and scales. These patterns don't describe slow, incremental change, not the kind we see when a tree grows or a child learns how to walk. Instead, they describe something more dramatic, moments when entire systems reorganize into something fundamentally new. Scientists call these moments phase changes, and they offer us a powerful lens for understanding the transformation humanity might be going through right now. In this episode, I want to walk you through 4 examples of phase change moments in nature. Each of them offers a different angle on how radical transformation unfolds, and together they show us that big shifts often follow surprisingly similar rules. From butterflies and dragonflies to water turning into ice, to the emergence of collective intelligence in ant colonies. These are all moments where complexity jumps, where something becomes more than it was before. What ties all of these transformations together are a few key principles. First, they often begin with a period of chaos or breakdown. The old structure dissolves before the new one emerges. Second, the shift, when it happens, is fast and complete. There is usually no halfway point between water and ice, or between a caterpillar and a butterfly. Third, small changes can trigger huge system-wide effects. These moments often defy our usual expectations of cause and effect. And finally, what emerges is something that couldn't have been predicted from what came before. Entirely new properties arise, new capabilities, new identities. And as we move into these examples, think of them not just as metaphors, but as possible mirrors. Because if humanity is approaching its own phase change, as I believe it is, then we do well to study the way transformation unfolds in the rest of nature. So let's start with maybe the most iconic examples of all, the caterpillar's transformation into a butterfly. Now, most of us know this story. We learned it as kids. But what's often missed is just how radical this transformation actually is. It's not just about a creature growing wings. It's not a linear upgrade like version 2.0 of the same being. What happens inside the chrysalis is nothing short of biological alchemy. Before it ever gets there, the caterpillar goes through several growth phases, molting its skin 4 to 5 times. Each mold is a kind of small transformation, but those are just preludes. The real shift comes later. When the caterpillar reaches its full size, it enters the chrysalis phase. And here's where things get truly astonishing. It doesn't just grow wings. It doesn't keep its basic form and adds some extras. No, it dissolves completely. Most of its body breaks down into a soup of cells, a biological goo. But not everything breaks down. Inside the caterpillar, all along, are these special clusters of cells called imaginal discs. They've been there from the beginning, dormant and waiting. And now, inside the chrysalis, they activate. They begin to multiply, and they become the building blocks of an entirely new creature. And here's the part that really gets me. When these imaginal cells first activate, the caterpillar's immune system sees them as a threat, something foreign, a potential threat to the system, and actually tries to destroy them. But the imaginal cells persist. They keep multiplying. Eventually, they reach a tipping point where they overwhelm the old system's resistance. And once that happens, they start organizing. They collaborate. They form wings, antenna, legs, etc. The architecture of a completely new being. There's no central command, no one telling them what to do. Each group of cells somehow knows its roles in the larger transformation. It's as if they're following an invisible blueprint. And then the butterfly emerges, a new creature, a new form, new function, new relationship with the world. It's not just a prettier version of the caterpillar. It has a totally different role in the ecosystem. While the caterpillar is a consumer, eating constantly, growing, extracting, the butterfly becomes a pollinator, a steward of life. It moves differently, it sees differently, it contributes differently. And still, somewhere inside that butterfly, there's a nervous system that remembers. Studies suggested that butterflies can actually retain memories from their caterpillar stage. So even though almost everything has changed, there's still a thread of continuity running through. Now think about what this might mean for us. What if we, as a civilization, are entering our own chrysalis moment? What if the systems and identities we've known, economic, political, psychological, are starting to dissolve? What if new patterns, new ways of being are already present in us, like imaginal cells, just waiting for the right moment to awaken? And what if those new possibilities, at first, are met with resistance from the old system? What if the immune system of our civilization sees the new as a threat, tries to suppress it, and yet the new keeps growing? This metaphor has so many layers. It tells us that the old might need to break down for the new to emerge, that the seeds of the future are already there, that transformation isn't always graceful. Sometimes it looks like chaos. And that if we trust the process, something extraordinary might come through. Now let's turn to another extraordinary transformation, one that isn't just about changing form, but about moving between entire realms of existence. The dragonfly. Before becoming the elegant flying creature we know, the dragonfly spends most of its life underwater. In this early stage, it lives as a nymph, a fast, aggressive predator in murky waters. It has no wings, no dazzling flight, just jet propulsion and a spring-loaded jaw that shoots out to catch prey with startling precision. It's fierce, it's built for survival, and it thrives in an environment that most of us wouldn't associate with beauty or grace. The dragonfly nymph molts many times as it grows, similar to the caterpillar. But these are all small transformations, preparatory steps. There's no hint yet of the creature it's going to become. And then, one day, something shifts. Triggered by internal and environmental signals, the nymph begins its final transformation. It climbs out of the water. Think about that. It leaves its entire known world behind, the realm where it breathes, hunts, and survives. And it enters a new element, one it isn't yet suited for, one it has no guarantee it will survive in. It's completely vulnerable. It can't breathe properly. It can't fly. Its body isn't ready yet, but still it climbs. Once it finds a secure perch, it begins to molt one last time. Its exoskeleton splits open along the back, and slowly, painstakingly, the adult dragonfly emerges. Wings crumbled, skin soft, barely functioning. It has to wait. Its new body needs to harden. Its wings must stretch and dry. It's a waiting game, and during this period, it's entirely defenseless. Any predator, any weather disruption could end it all. But if it survives this moment, if it can hold through that threshold, then something miraculous happens. It begins to fly. Not just fly, but hover, maneuver, dart, and reverse. It now has full wings that move independently. Its compound eyes give it nearly 360-degree vision. Its speed and agility are astonishing. It sees and moves in ways that were utterly impossible in its previous form. And more than that, it has left its old environment behind. It doesn't go back to the water. It doesn't hunt with its jaw anymore. It's now a different being, living in a different realm, operating in a completely different relationship to space, time, and energy. This journey holds powerful metaphors for where we are as a species. Right now, much of our society still operates like the nymph, in survival mode, built on extraction, competition, and short-term gain. We've been optimizing for one realm, and that optimization has brought us far. But we're approaching a point where our current operating system won't work much longer. Like the dragonfly, we may need to leave the water, to voluntarily step into a realm we haven't yet adapted to. A realm that requires new capabilities, new senses, new forms of coordination. And that move, that shift, is really vulnerable. There's a window where we leave behind what's familiar, but haven't yet fully become the next versions of ourselves. That's where risk lives. But it's also where the miracle happens. This transformation shows us that evolution isn't always incremental. Sometimes it means stepping into the unknown before we are ready, and trusting that something deeper in us knows how to grow wings. So until now, we've looked at living creatures undergoing metamorphosis. But nature also teaches us through the transformation of matter itself. One of the most elegant and profound examples of this is how water turns into ice. Now, on the surface, that might sound pretty ordinary. We've all seen water freeze. But when you look more closely at what's actually happening on the molecular level, you realize this is one of the clearest demonstrations of how profound change really works. Here's how it goes. As the temperature drops, water doesn't just gradually become ice. It doesn't harden bit by bit. What actually happens is that the water molecules start to become more chaotic. They fluctuate, they bounce around, they try out different configurations. Just before freezing, the system enters a phase called nucleation. This is where the molecules become increasingly unstable and erratic, a period of maximum fluctuation and maximum entropy. It might look chaotic, but this state is essential. The molecules are searching for a new way to organize themselves. And then, almost instantly, the entire system snaps into order. At a precise threshold, those same chaotic molecules lock into a place, forming a crystalline structure. The change is sudden, irreversible, and total. Water becomes ice. It's a complete phase shift. And why does this matter to us? Well, because the same pattern shows up in complex systems, including human ones. That period of chaos where everything feels uncertain, unstable, out of sync, that's not failure. That's often the necessary precondition for transformation. The system has to let go of its old patterns before a new one can emerge. And until that threshold is reached, it's likely it's trying new possibilities, searching for coherence. And once it finds it, change spreads really fast. The initial crystallization doesn't happen everywhere at once. It starts with just a few molecules, a seed structure, and then cascades outwards. This is really critical. One local shift can trigger a global transformation. A small, organized pattern can propagate throughout an entire system once conditions are right. The implications for human society are big. What we are living through right now, the turbulence, the fragmentation, the social and ecological volatility, may feel really chaotic. But maybe that's exactly what it needs to feel like when a system is approaching a tipping point. It may be our own nucleation phase. Another fascinating detail: when water freezes, it has to release a significant amount of energy. This hidden energy release, called latent heat, is necessary for the transformation to occur. And during this process, the temperature doesn't change. In other words, transformation is happening beneath the surface, invisible to the eye. There's a parallel here too. Societal transformation often requires releasing stored tension, shedding outdated structures, letting go of what no longer serves. And much of that may be happening quietly, under the radar, until suddenly the shift becomes visible and undeniable. Finally, water turning into ice is an example of self-organization. No external hand arranges the molecules. The new order emerges from within the system itself, once the conditions are right. This is a powerful reminder. Transformation doesn't always require top-down control. It can arise from the bottom up, from local coherence, from small groups aligning to a deeper pattern, and then catalyzing system-wide change. Well, so far we've explored how transformation happens in individual organisms and even in molecules. But now let's turn to something a bit more abstract and maybe even more astonishing. Because nature doesn't only reorganize matter or biology, it also shows us how intelligence itself can evolve, not just in individuals, but collectively. Let's talk about ants. At first glance, an individual ant isn't all that impressive. It follows a basic set of behavioral rules. It responds to smells, environmental cues, simple signals. One ant alone can't do that much. But something strange happens when enough ants come together. Once a colony reaches a certain size, a critical mass, a kind of intelligence begins to emerge. Suddenly, the group starts to behave in ways that none of the individuals are capable of on their own. Scientists call this phenomenon a quorum sensing. It's when enough local interactions between individuals suddenly trigger new levels of coordination. And the result? A transformation from a group of individuals into something new, a superorganism. The colony becomes more than the sum of its parts. It starts building intricate nests with built-in air conditioning or starts farming fungi. It organizes itself for warfare, for transportation, for food storage. And none of it is planned from the top. No ant is in charge. There's no central command. The intelligence just emerges. This is swarm intelligence, and it's one of the clearest examples of phase change in consciousness. The parallels to human transformation are striking. Like ants, humans are wired for local interaction, conversations, networks, shared beliefs. But when the right conditions are in place, enough connectivity, shared purpose, distributed awareness, something new can emerge, something collective, and potentially something more intelligent. Just like Just like with caterpillars or crystallizing water, the transformation doesn't begin smoothly. As an ant colony grows, There's a period of trial and error. It seems chaotic, inefficient, maybe even dysfunctional. But this period of turbulence is essential. It's how the system feels its way into a new structure. And then suddenly, something clicks. The system crosses a threshold. A new pattern stabilizes. The ants aren't just acting individually anymore. The colony thinks together. It solves problems together. It behaves as one. That shift is what makes this example so powerful, because it suggests that when we humans are facing breakdown in our institutions, in our environment, in how we make sense of the world, it might be a sign that something collective is trying to emerge. A new layer of coordination, a new field of intelligence. Not replacing the individual, but arising through our interactions. And there's something else here, resilience. Once an ant colony becomes a superorganism, it becomes incredibly adaptive. You can remove a large number of individual ants and the system still functions. It can self-repair. It's distributed, not fragile. That's a quality our current systems, governments, corporations, our economies deeply lack. They're too centralized, too brittle. But perhaps we're being invited into more distributed ways of organizing. Now, finally, the intelligence of ant colonies raises a big question. What new forms of human consciousness might emerge when we reach our own critical threshold? Could a kind of planetary awareness arise? Not in some mystical sense, but as a new layer of intelligence built on top of our networks, technologies, and collective experiences. We're already seeing glimpses of this. Decentralized movements, open source collaboration, emergent forms of governance, but it's still early. And just like the ant colony, there's no central planner that makes this happen. It emerges when the conditions are right. When enough of us start acting in ways that are coherent with what wants to emerge. So we've just explored 4 powerful examples of phase changes in nature. The butterfly's metamorphosis, the dragonfly's elemental leap, the crystallization of water, and the emergence of collective intelligence in ant colonies. Now let's zoom out. What do they have in common? And what can they teach us about the moment humanity finds itself in right now? Across all these transformations, we start to see some striking patterns. First, before any real transformation happens, there's chaos. Some kind of dissolution, instability, or turbulence. The caterpillar dissolves into a cellular soup, the dragonfly leaves the safety of the water and enters a completely unfamiliar world. Water molecules start vibrating chaotically just before they snap into a new pattern. And yeah, the ants wander around inefficiently before suddenly becoming a coherent collective. So maybe what looks like collapse in our world today, economic volatility, institutional breakdown, ecological disruption, is actually the turbulence before a reorganization. Maybe it's not the end. Maybe it's the middle of something. Secondly, transformation doesn't happen incrementally. There's no halfway butterfly, no half-frozen water, no sort of flying dragonfly, no almost superorganism. Once the system hits a threshold, the shift is rapid and total. The new form emerges fast and often unpredictably. That tells us that when the conditions are right, change can cascade through a system at astonishing speeds. And we may be closer to that tipping point than we think. Third, new capabilities emerge. Capabilities that were impossible in the old form. A butterfly can fly. A dragonfly can see 360 degrees. Water becomes a lattice of crystal. Ants gain a kind of collective brain. None of these features existed before the shift. They are emergent properties, things that come into being only after transformation. So what emergent properties might arise from humanity's own transformation? Could we see new forms of intelligence, organization, empathy, or planetary coordination? What might become possible that we can't even imagine yet? Fourth, timing and conditions matter. These transformations only occur when certain thresholds are crossed, hormonally, environmentally, or structurally. The caterpillar needs the right cues. Water needs a specific temperature and pressures. The ant colony needs enough members. So for us, what are the conditions we need to cross our own threshold? Are we getting close? Are we even aware of what those thresholds might be? And finally, and maybe most importantly, every transformation involves a new relationship to the world. The caterpillar consumes, the butterfly pollinates, the dragonfly shifts from underwater predator to aerial acrobat. Water becomes structure. Ants become a superorganism. That's the deeper invitation here, not just to change form, but to change role, to shift how we relate to each other, to the planet, and to the future. Because when we look at the world right now, the rise of superintelligence, the strain of our monetary systems, the climate crisis, the geopolitical fracturing, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. But through the lens of natural phase change, we start to see a different picture. Maybe these aren't separate crises. Maybe they're interconnected signs that we're approaching a collective phase shift. And just like the chrysalis or the nymph crawling out of the water, or the molecules right before crystallization, we may be standing at our own bifurcation point. A moment where the system could go in very different directions based on what we do now. These points are rare, they're unstable, but they're also filled with potential. And while we can't control transformation, we can support it. Just like nature creates the right conditions for change. The chrysalis, the temperature shift, the colony size. We too can create containers for transformation. We can nurture the new, even while the old dissolves. We can pay attention to the early signals, the imaginal cells, and amplify them. Because once that phase change kicks in, the world won't be the same. It can't be. And the question will no longer be whether change is coming, but who we're going to be as it arrives. Thank you for listening. If this episode stirred something in you, I'd love for you to share it with a friend, with your community, or on social media. These conversations are meant to really ripple outward. And obviously, you can subscribe to The Initiation wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss what's next. And until then, stay grounded, stay open, and stay connected to what matters most.